this is my reinterpretation or interpretation of a funk track. So funk de-emphasizes the melody and the chord progressions and focuses more on a strong rhythmic groove with a bass line, usually played by an electric bassist in my case, and a drum part played by a percussionist, but in my case it's played by the computer. So it usually uses richly coloured and extended chords, usually found in sort of bebop and jazz, such as minor chords and added sevenths and or dominant seventh chords or minor nine chords and added ninth chords. In this, swung 16th notes, syncopation and all the bass lines, and sort of syncopated drums and syncopated guitars. So in terms of instrumentation, I had 2 keyboards, a bass, 2 guitars and a drum. Well, actually 1 guitar. So the drums played the snare on the 4 and the 8th. Plays the 8th note hats, and the bass drum follows the guitar comping to create a sort of funky driving drum rhythm. It just keeps the rhythm, keeps the groove, keeps it funky. So for the bass is probably the most important part of funk music. Typically, the bass is played with emphasis on the first beat. So in my track, the root note of the chord played on the beat 1. Because funk puts a lot of emphasis on the beat 1, and then followed by a syncopated extended pentatonic scale, which I'll demonstrate. So it's like a sort of a pentatonic little ascending sort. It's played in a very syncopated fashion, and then this sequence follows the chords with throughout the first section, the first chord progression, and then in the second chord progression, the second section, the bass plays the root note, followed by the 5th and then the octave back to the root. So it's like I'll play it just to demonstrate. And that's played throughout the second section, starting on the root note of each chord played. In this piece I use 2 keyboard parts. So the first keyboard part is in a MIDI electric piano, and the electric piano plays the chord progression, which is made up of minor 9 chords, including A minor 9, C minor 9 and G minor 9, and B flat minor 9. So, and at the end, it's a looped chord progression at the start. The first chord progression is at the end of each loop of the chord progression. It plays an ascending chord progression that goes from the G minor 9, ascending chromatically up to B flat minor 9. The chords are played in a funky syncopated rhythm, which almost resembles a high-tempoed bossa nova rhythm, and this adds just like a funky, danceable groove, because a lot of funk is very much usually intended on being used for dancing and grooving and just physically feeling the music, and that rhythm really gives you a sort of walking dance rhythm to go from. So in the second keyboard part, it's an improvised lead part. So this is an electric piano sound that's played through a distorted amplifier to give it a funky, distorted clavinet-like sound. So it's mainly a solo part. There's only a solo part, and it revolves around a few different scales, such as the C minor pentatonic and a C minor blues scale. But it also uses a lot of jazzy sort of chromatic passing notes, such as that type of thing. So that gives it a sort of jazzy groove, and a sort of funky bluesy groove almost as well. And this instrument plays two solo parts, one during the first section, one in the second section, and it uses the pitch bending a lot throughout the 2 solos, because it adds a sort of bluesy emotion to the solo. So for the guitar part, the guitar plays two different elements of this track. So the first element played is it's used as percussion, and it plays a muted sort of strum made up of sort of syncopated 16th notes. So it goes, and that's used as a sort of driving percussive sound throughout. And then the guitar also plays the same chord progression as the keyboard, only it's a lot higher octave. But it also plays, instead of minor nines, it's slightly broken up, so it plays a minor 7 chord with the ninth as a hammer-on. And this technique is used a lot in funk, such as I feel like being a sex machine by James Brown. And this is played throughout the two sections. And that makes the whole, that sort of brings it all together and makes it a funk track as a whole.